There's something I've never told anyone, and maybe after this, people will hate me for it. But I don't care anymore. I've spent over 40 years working inside the banking system, and now, looking back, I realize most people have no idea how badly they're being played. Their trust, their savings, their future, it's all just a game to the people in charge. A very profitable game. When I first started, I believed in the system. I was young, ambitious, and naive enough to think banks were about helping people. Loans for families, mortgages for homes, savings accounts to secure a future. That's what they tell you, what they make you believe. But the deeper I got, the more I saw, and what I saw made me sick. The truth is, banks don't exist to help people. They exist to extract as much money from them as possible in ways so subtle, so brilliantly calculated that you don't even realize it's happening. Fees, interest rates, account structures, they're all traps. And once you step in, it's nearly impossible to get out without losing something. Let me give you an example. Do you know what happens to the money you deposit in your bank account? You probably think it just sits there waiting for you to use it. It doesn't. The bank takes it and uses it. They lend it out, they invest it, they gamble with it, all while giving you a pathetic fraction of a % in interest. And the best part? If they screw up and lose billions, it's not them who suffers. It's you. Because banks never truly fail, they just shift the burden onto the customers, onto the government, onto taxpayers. The system is designed so they can never lose. And that's just the beginning. Let's talk about fees. Overdraft fees, maintenance fees, wire transfer fees, foreign transaction fees. Do you think they actually cost the bank anything? Not really. But they generate billions in revenue. And here's the dirty little secret. Banks deliberately design their systems to make sure you get hit with those fees. Ever notice how transactions sometimes go through in a weird order? That's not a mistake. That's a strategy. They process larger transactions first, so your balance depletes faster, and then boom, multiple overdraft fees for every little charge that follows. It's not bad luck. It's not a glitch. It's a calculated move to squeeze every last cent from you. And then there are loans. The biggest lie of them all. Mortgages, auto loans, credit cards, they sell you the dream of ownership while making sure you stay trapped in debt. They don't want you to pay things off quickly. They want you to stay on that hook, making minimum payments, drowning in interest that compounds so fast you'll never escape. Every payment you make lines their pockets while barely touching the principal. And if you think you're safe because you have good credit, think again. They find ways to manipulate that too, raising interest rates on a whim, slashing credit limits without warning, making sure even the most responsible borrowers never feel fully secure. But the worst part? It's all legal. The government, the regulators, they know. They allow it. They need the banks to thrive because the entire economy is built on this house of cards. They'll fine a bank a few million here and there, make a big show of it in the news, but it's all theater. A slap on the wrist. A cost of doing business. The real game never stops. I've seen things I wish I could forget. I've seen how banks pressure desperate people into loans they can't afford, knowing full well they'll default. I've seen them manipulate interest rates in ways the average person could never understand, adjusting the market like puppet masters. I've seen accounts drained by fraud only for the bank to drag its feet, blaming the victim, refusing to reimburse them unless they fight tooth and nail. And yet, people keep trusting banks. They keep depositing their money, taking out loans, swiping their credit cards, never realizing they're walking into a rigged game where the house always wins. So why am I telling you this now? Because I'm done. I'm old enough to know that nothing I say will change the system, but maybe, just maybe, it'll wake someone up. Make them think twice before trusting a system designed to bleed them dry. And if nothing else, at least I won't take these secrets to my grave. But let me warn you, what I've told you so far. It's just the surface. The real dirt, the things that happen behind closed doors, the manipulations that make even seasoned bankers uneasy, that's what I'm going to tell you next. And I promise you, once you hear it, you'll never look at your bank the same way again. I never set out to be part of something this big, this calculated. At the beginning, I was just another guy trying to build a life, trying to find a stable job, something respectable, something that felt important. Banks had a reputation back then. If you worked at a bank, people saw you as someone responsible, someone trustworthy. It wasn't glamorous, but it was secure. And security, that's what we were all chasing. I was 22 when I got my first job at the bank. Fresh out of college, wearing a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, trying to act like I knew what I was doing. I remember walking through those glass doors for the first time. Polished floors, the scent of fresh paper and coffee, the soft clicking of keyboards in the background. It felt like stepping into another world. A world of order and professionalism. The managers walked around with an air of quiet authority, dressed in dark suits, their voices low and confident. At first, I was assigned to simple tasks, processing deposits, helping customers set up accounts, answering questions about loans. It was all routine. People would come in, smile politely, sign some papers, and leave trusting us with their money, their dreams. I liked that feeling, the sense of being part of something bigger. Felt like we were helping people. Families came in to apply for mortgages. Young couples trying to buy their first home. Small business owners looking for a loan to expand. And we gave them hope. We made them believe that the system was built for them. I used to believe that too. My life back then was simple. I had a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, just a place to sleep after long hours at the office. I had a girlfriend, Lisa. She worked as a teacher. We talked about getting married, about buying a house, about starting a family. She trusted me, trusted that I was building something solid, something real. And I thought I was. But looking back now, I see the cracks that were always there, even in those early days. The things I ignored, the little details I brushed off. I remember one of the senior managers telling me, "People don't read the fine print, kid, and that's what keeps the lights on." He laughed when he said it, like it was just an inside joke. I laughed too, not really understanding what he meant. Not yet. The first time I felt something was off, it was small. Just a minor discrepancy in a customer's account. A few extra fees that didn't make sense. I brought it up to my supervisor, expecting him to fix it. He barely glanced at the screen before shrugging. "Yeah, that happens sometimes. Don't worry about it." So I didn't. Little things like that happened all the time. Customers complaining about overdraft fees they shouldn't have been charged. Loans being approved at interest rates that seemed higher than what was promised. And every time I asked about it, I got the same answer: "That's just how it works." I started to notice patterns. Customers with lower balances got hit with more fees. Those who struggled the most seemed to be the ones paying the highest price. The wealthier clients, the ones with large deposits, got perks, lower rates, waived fees, exclusive services. The bank called it tiered banking. I called it what it really was: a system built to punish the poor and reward the rich. But I still didn't question it. Not really. I told myself that's just how businesses operated, that it wasn't personal, that it wasn't malicious. And then one day, I saw something that made me stop pretending. It was late, past closing hours. Most of the staff had gone home, but I stayed behind to finish some paperwork. The manager's office door was slightly open, and I could hear voices inside. They were talking about accounts, high-value clients, but something about the way they spoke, it didn't sound like customer service. It sounded like strategy. I peeked inside, just for a second. There were 3 of them, high-level executives, men I'd only seen in brief meetings. One of them was pointing at a chart, something about liquidity ratios and adjustments. But what caught my eye was the word written in bold letters at the top: managed losses. I didn't understand what it meant at the time. But the way they were talking, it wasn't about preventing losses. It was about controlling them. Choosing where they happened, who they affected. That was the first time I felt it. The unease, the quiet, creeping realization that this wasn't just a business. This was something else. I wish I could say that moment changed everything, that I walked away right then and there. But I didn't. Because when you're inside, when you're part of the system, it's hard to see just how deep the rot goes. So I stayed. And the deeper I went, the more I learned. About how banks make decisions, not for the people, not even for their customers, but for themselves. About how they shape the market, manipulate the rules, ensure that no matter what happens, they always come out on top. I had no idea just how bad it would get. But I was about to find out. And once I did, there was no going back. I should have left then. That night, standing outside the manager's office, hearing them talk about managed losses, I should have walked away. But I didn't. I told myself it wasn't my business, that I was just a small part of a massive system. Banks have their own language, their own way of operating. Who was I to question it? And yet, something about that conversation wouldn't leave me alone. The next day, I found myself paying closer attention, watching, listening, noticing things I'd never noticed before. The way numbers on the system changed overnight. The way certain transactions seemed to disappear only to reappear later, slightly altered. But the first real sign that something was wrong that came in the form of a file. A single document. A mistake. It was a slow Friday afternoon. Most of the office was already half checked out, ready for the weekend. I was going through routine paperwork, verifying account closures, processing transactions when an internal email popped up on my screen. A forwarded document. Nothing unusual. We passed information around all the time. I opened it without thinking. And that's when I saw it. A list of names. Hundreds of them. Each with an account number, a balance, and something else. A column labeled reallocation. At first, I didn't understand. But as I scrolled down, a pattern emerged. The same amounts moved from one account to another in precise, calculated adjustments. Sometimes small, $50 here, $100 there. Other times much larger. Thousands. Tens of thousands. And always from accounts that seemed inactive. Dormant accounts. Money that had been sitting untouched for months, sometimes years. I stared at the numbers, my stomach tightening. I knew what it looked like. Someone was moving money around. Shifting it between accounts in a way that made it hard to notice. Hard to track. But why? And then, as quickly as it appeared, the email vanished. Right in front of me. Gone. Recalled. I blinked at the screen, my pulse spiking. That wasn't normal. I'd seen emails get recalled before, typos, wrong recipients, nothing serious. But this was different. This wasn't a memo or a misplaced report. Someone had sent this by accident. And they realized it too late. I sat there, staring at the empty inbox, my hands hovering over the keyboard. Should I say something? Ask a question? Pretend I hadn't seen it? I hesitated too long. A minute later, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But I knew I had to. Hello? A pause. Then a voice, calm, professional. Too professional. Hey, this is James from IT. We, had a system hiccup just now. You might have received an email in error. If you did, please disregard it. It wasn't meant for you. A system hiccup? That wasn't how IT talked. They didn't call employees over minor email errors. They just fixed things. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay even. Yeah, I saw something. But it disappeared. Another pause. Just a fraction too long. Good, James said. No worries then. Have a great weekend. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. That wasn't normal. That wasn't right. I glanced around the office. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. Business as usual. But I felt it, an unease crawling up my spine, a sense that I'd just seen something I wasn't supposed to see. I told myself I was being paranoid. That maybe it really was a mistake, a random IT cleanup. But deep down, I knew better. Because the next Monday, something changed. New security protocols. A fresh reminder from HR about confidentiality policies. A sudden unexplained update to our internal system. And then a meeting. A meeting I wasn't supposed to be in. A meeting that would change everything. I walked into the office on Monday morning and everything felt different. It wasn't obvious. Not at first. People were still moving through their routines, checking emails, making small talk, pouring coffee. But there was something beneath the surface, a tension I hadn't noticed before. The managers were quieter. More watchful. The senior staff, the ones who usually strolled around like they owned the place, kept their heads down, speaking in hushed tones behind closed doors. And security, there were more of them. Not obvious, but if you paid attention, you'd see them lingering near the executive offices, near the server rooms. Places they normally didn't patrol. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being paranoid over an email. But then the meeting happened. It wasn't on my calendar. My supervisor just appeared at my desk and said, "Conference room." Now. No explanation. No warning. I followed him down the hall, my stomach tightening with every step. The blinds were closed. The room was colder than usual, the AC humming like white noise against the silence. 3 men sat at the table. I recognized one, Mark Jensen, one of the regional directors. The other 2? I had no idea. Their suits were sharp, their expressions unreadable. Mark gestured to a chair. "Sit." I did. One of the strangers leaned forward. "You received an email on Friday." I felt my pulse in my throat. "Yeah, but it disappeared." The other man nodded. "Good. That email wasn't meant for you. It contained sensitive internal data." I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. "IT already called me about it." Mark smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. "We just want to make sure there are no misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. That's what they called it. Not fraud. Not unauthorized transactions. Just a simple little misunderstanding. I nodded, keeping my voice even. Of course. The second man, the one who hadn't spoken yet, finally did. His voice was smooth. Too smooth. Good. Because you're a valued employee and we'd hate for this to turn into something more complicated. A threat. Wrapped up in polite language. I knew what this was. They weren't asking me anything. They were warning me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. Understood. Mark held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded. Good. You're dismissed. I walked out of that room with my heart pounding. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that they'd called me in to clear things up or the fact that I still didn't know what I had stumbled into. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't imagining things. This wasn't just a mistake. Something was happening inside the bank, something they didn't want me or anyone else looking into. And the moment I stepped out of that meeting, I realized I had a choice to make. I could pretend I never saw that email. Keep my head down. Do my job. Or I could find out the truth. The problem was, I wasn't sure how much I really wanted to know. I told myself I'd let it go. That I'd go back to my desk, do my job, and pretend nothing had happened. That's what they wanted after all. To make me doubt myself. To make me feel like this was all just an unfortunate misunderstanding. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the meeting over and over in my head. The way they looked at me. The way they spoke. Not as if they were clarifying a mistake, but as if they were checking something. Making sure I wasn't a problem. And that email, those transactions, they weren't random. They were deliberate. The next morning, I made a decision. If they were going to treat me like a threat, maybe it was time I became one. I started small. Subtle. I went back into the system, searching through old reports, looking for anything that resembled what I'd seen in that email. I was careful, not doing anything too obvious, just skimming through routine audits, flagging nothing, leaving no traces. At first, I found nothing. The system was clean. Too clean. And then I stumbled onto something. It was buried deep in the logs, anomalies in account adjustments, just like the ones I had seen in that email. Transfers between dormant accounts, money being moved in and out without any clear reason. But what really caught my eye wasn't the movement of funds. It was where they were going. Because these weren't just random transactions. They were being funneled into shell accounts. Accounts with no real owners. No real activity. Just holding places for money that didn't technically exist. I clicked through one of the account histories, feeling my pulse spike with every transaction I traced. The money moved in circles, jumping from one account to another, vanishing into offshore entities that didn't even have proper registrations. This was money laundering. Sophisticated. Hidden in plain sight. And the numbers, they weren't small. We weren't talking about a few thousand here and there. This was millions. Millions of dollars being siphoned off, moved through an intricate network of fake accounts, wiped clean of any traceable origin. And the worst part? It wasn't happening once or twice. It was routine. This wasn't a rogue employee or some isolated scam. This was systemic. Someone, multiple people inside the bank had built an entire infrastructure to move illegal money. And they were doing it through customers' dormant accounts. Accounts belonging to real people. People who had no idea their names were being used in one of the biggest financial frauds I had ever seen. I felt my stomach drop. This was huge. And then I realized something even worse. This had been going on for years. The timestamps on the transactions, some of them dated back over a decade. Different account numbers, different amounts, but the same pattern. Over and over. A perfect system. Invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. And I had just found it. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands cold against the keyboard. My mind raced through the implications. This wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. And if I had found it in just a few hours of quiet digging. They knew. The executives. The managers. The people who had called me into that room. They weren't just covering up a mistake. They were protecting this. I was never supposed to see that email. Because the second I did, I became a liability. My throat was dry. I shut down my computer and sat back, trying to breathe. My entire career, I had thought banks were just playing the game unfairly, charging fees, manipulating credit, exploiting the system in ways that were legal but immoral. But this was different. This was outright organized crime. And I had just stepped into the middle of it. I shut down my computer and leaned back in my chair, my breath shallow. My hands were shaking. The weight of what I had just uncovered pressed down on me like a vice. This wasn't just an internal banking trick, a way to squeeze more money from unsuspecting customers. This was criminal. A full-scale operation hidden in the very system I had been a part of for decades. And now I knew about it. That thought chilled me more than anything else. For a moment, I sat there, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. That maybe there was a reasonable explanation for all of this. That maybe I was seeing patterns where there were none. But deep down, I knew better. The numbers didn't lie. This wasn't an accident. I needed to do something. But what? Go to the authorities? Report it to someone higher up? The rational part of me wanted to believe that would work. That there were safeguards in place, regulatory bodies that would put a stop to this. But then I remembered that meeting. The way they looked at me. The way they warned me without actually saying the words. They already suspected I had seen something. And if I went to the wrong person? My stomach twisted. I needed time. Time to think. Time to figure out my next move. I grabbed my jacket, muttered something about feeling sick, and walked out of the office. The moment I stepped onto the street, the air felt different. Colder. Heavier. The people walking past me, the cars pulling up to the curb, everything felt off, like the world had shifted in some imperceptible way. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I saw him. A man. Standing across the street, leaning against a black car, wearing a suit that was just a little too crisp, sunglasses that didn't match the cloudy sky. He wasn't doing anything. Not looking at his phone, not hailing a cab, just standing there. Watching. I forced myself to keep walking. I didn't turn my head, didn't change my pace, but every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong. Had I seen him before? Was he from the bank? Or was this just my mind playing tricks on me? I took a detour, cutting through an alleyway past the back entrance of a cafe I knew. When I came out onto the next block, I glanced back, quick, just for a second. He was still there. My mouth went dry. This wasn't paranoia. They were watching me. I had two choices. I could go home, act like nothing had happened, hope that if I stayed quiet, they'd leave me alone. Or I could run. But where? And for how long? I wasn't some criminal mastermind. I was a banker, a guy who had spent his life behind a desk. I didn't know how to disappear, how to cover my tracks. But I knew one thing. If they were watching me, it meant they didn't trust me to stay silent. And if they didn't trust me, I was already in danger. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. Who could I call? A lawyer? A journalist? Someone outside the system? But before I could make a decision, my phone buzzed. A message. We need to talk. Now. No name. No number. Just those 4 words. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. They weren't just watching me. They were one step ahead. I stood there, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. We need to talk. Now. No name. No number. Just a demand. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, my mind racing. This wasn't a random message. This wasn't a mistake. Someone knew what I had seen. Someone knew I was digging. And they were reaching out. But why? Was this a warning? A trap? Or was it someone on the inside, someone like me trying to get out? I glanced around, scanning the street, my pulse pounding. The man by the black car was gone. But that didn't mean I was safe. I had a choice to make. I could ignore the message, keep my head down, pretend I hadn't seen anything. But I already knew how that would end. I'd be watched. Controlled. Maybe worse. Or I could answer. I took a breath, exhaled slowly, and typed back, "Where?" The reply came almost instantly. "Parking garage. Level 3. Now." A cold knot twisted in my stomach. I knew that garage. It was 2 blocks away. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to walk the other way, to leave my phone on a bench, buy a ticket to anywhere, disappear. But something kept me moving. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was the realization that I was already too deep to get out clean. I reached the parking garage and took the stairs up to level 3. The air was thick with exhaust fumes, the dim fluorescent lights flickering overhead. It was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered around, their windshields reflecting the harsh glow. And then I saw him. A man leaning against a silver sedan, hands in his pockets. He looked ordinary, mid-40s, dark suit, the kind of face you'd forget in a crowd. But his eyes were sharp. Alert. I approached cautiously, my heart hammering in my chest. "You're late," he said. His voice was low, steady. I stopped a few feet away. "Who are you?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Someone who should have walked away a long time ago." I swallowed hard. "Why am I here?" He studied me for a moment, then reached into his pocket. I tensed, but he only pulled out a flash drive. He held it up between 2 fingers. "Because you need to understand what you're up against." I hesitated, then took it. The metal felt cold in my hand. "That email you saw?" he continued. "It was a mistake. Someone slipped up. And that means the clock is ticking." I frowned. "What's on this?" "The truth." His expression darkened. "Real numbers. Real accounts. Enough to put a lot of important people in prison. I felt my stomach twist. How do I know you're not setting me up? He smirked. If I wanted you gone, you'd already be gone. I didn't like that answer, but I didn't press it. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me. You've seen enough to know this isn't just about money. It's power, influence, and the people running this? They don't make mistakes often. When they do, they clean up fast. I gripped the flash drive tighter. Why are you helping me? His jaw tightened. Because I was you once, and I stayed too long. Before I could ask what that meant, he glanced past me, his eyes narrowing. You need to go. Now. A car engine rumbled somewhere below us. I turned, my gut clenching. When I looked back, the man was already walking away. Wait, He didn't stop. He just disappeared into the shadows between the parked cars. I stood there, pulse hammering, the weight of the flash drive pressing against my palm. I had the truth now. And I had a choice. Run or expose everything. Either way, there was no turning back. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at the flash drive in my hands, feeling the weight of it, the silent, pulsing danger it carried. I knew what was on it before I even plugged it in. But knowing and seeing, those were two different things. At 3 a.m., I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and inserted the drive. Files. Dozens of them. Names, accounts, transaction histories. Numbers so big they barely looked real, but the patterns were there. The same movement of funds I had seen before, except this time it was all laid out, every detail, every connection, every offshore account designed to clean dirty money until it came out looking pristine. This wasn't just banking fraud. This was money laundering on a scale that should have been impossible. And the names attached to it. My stomach twisted. Executives. Politicians. Even regulatory officials, the very people meant to keep banks in check. They weren't just allowing it. They were part of it. I closed the laptop and ran a hand over my face. What the hell was I supposed to do with this? If I went public, I wouldn't just be going up against my bank. I'd be going up against an entire system, people with money, power, and the ability to make people disappear. I thought about calling the police. But what if they were compromised too? I thought about taking it to a journalist. But how could I be sure they wouldn't get silenced before the story even came out? There was no good option. And then I noticed something. An email draft buried in the files. It wasn't sent. It was just sitting there. Like someone had started to write it, then stopped. It was addressed to me. I opened it, my hands shaking. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. I felt my blood turn to ice. They don't let people walk away. You need to understand that. This isn't just fraud, it's a machine. And when a part of that machine stops working, they replace it. Quickly. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. You think you're careful. You're not. They already know you've seen too much. If you have the files, they're watching you. I read the last line over and over. You need to run. My hands were trembling. Who had written this? My informant? Someone before him? I didn't know. But the message was clear. I wasn't safe. I slammed the laptop shut, my heartbeat so loud I could hear it in my ears. I needed to think. I needed to get out. But then, a noise. Outside my apartment. Not a knock. Not a doorbell. Just footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. My body went cold. I killed the lights. Moved to the window, careful not to make a sound. Saw the black car parked across the street. They were here. I didn't have time to decide. I grabbed the flash drive, my phone, my jacket. Out the back door. Into the alley. I didn't look back. I don't remember how long I ran. The night blurred into a mess of dark alleys, cold air burning in my lungs, the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Every passing car felt like a threat. Every shadow seemed to move. I didn't go home. I didn't go to work. I didn't call anyone. Because I knew they were watching. Somewhere along the way, I ended up in a motel on the edge of the city. A place that smelled like cigarette smoke and desperation. I paid in cash. No ID. Sat on the bed, staring at the flash drive in my hand. And I thought about everything that had led me here. 40 years. 40 years inside a system I had believed in. At first, I told myself I was just an employee, a cog in a machine too big to question. Then I told myself that even if I saw things that didn't seem right, it wasn't my problem to fix. But now I knew the truth. The banks weren't just bending the rules. They weren't just squeezing customers for profit. They were laundering billions, covering their tracks so well that even regulators, especially regulators, didn't dare look too closely. And I had proof. I should have felt powerful. Like I was the one holding the cards now. But all I felt was small. Because what could I do? Expose them? To who? The police? The government? The media? What would happen next? A scandal? A few headlines? A congressional hearing where some overpaid executive in a tailored suit faked remorse for the cameras? And then what? Nothing. Because banks don't fail. They don't lose. They pay their fines, shift the blame, rebrand, and keep going. And people, good, hard-working people, keep trusting them. Because they have no choice. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just exhaustion. All these years, I thought I understood the system. I thought I was part of it. But I was never inside. I was just another piece on the board, moved when necessary, discarded when inconvenient. I thought about my life before all of this. About Lisa. About the years I wasted believing in a future that was never really mine. And I asked myself the one question that mattered. What now? I could run. Start over somewhere else. Disappear. Maybe they wouldn't bother chasing me if I stayed quiet, if I let them think I was too scared to do anything with what I knew. Or I could make sure the truth came out. Not through the police. Not through the government. Somewhere they couldn't control. Somewhere people would see. I took a deep breath. Made my choice. I reached for my laptop. And I started to type. So here I am. Sitting in a motel room with nothing but a laptop and a flash drive full of secrets. My entire life's work, everything I thought I knew, it's gone. Burned away by the truth. And now I'm left with a choice. I could stay quiet. Disappear. Let this knowledge eat away at me for the rest of my life. Or I could tell the world. I've already made my decision. By the time you hear this, the files will be out there. I won't say where. I won't say how. But if you dig deep enough, if you're willing to look past the headlines and the polished PR statements, you'll find it. And when you do, you'll see what I saw. The way banks don't just handle money, they move it, they manipulate it, they wash it clean. The way they convince you that they're keeping your money safe, when in reality, they're gambling with it behind your back. And the worst part? They know you won't stop them. Because what are you going to do? Pull your money out? Where would you put it? Banks own everything, your loans, your credit, your home, your future. They make you dependent on them. That's the real scam. And now that I see it, I can't unsee it. I used to believe in the system. Yeah? I believe in you. You, listening to this right now. Maybe you work in a bank. Maybe you've seen things too. Maybe you've always had this feeling that something wasn't right, but you didn't know what. Maybe you've been a victim, trapped in debt, screwed over by fine print, told there was nothing they could do while they drained your account with fees. So tell me, what do you think? Have you ever noticed something off? Something you couldn't explain? Have you ever had money disappear, fees you couldn't understand, loans that seemed designed to keep you struggling? Or maybe you work in finance. Maybe you know things. Maybe you've seen the cracks in the system just like I did. If you have, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Share your story. Because the more people talk about this, the harder it is for them to hide it. And if you think this story is something people need to hear, share it. Because trust me, they don't want you to know. And if you're wondering what happens to me now? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe they'll find me. Maybe they'll make sure this all goes away. Or maybe, just maybe, I'll disappear before they can. But one thing is for sure. They can't silence all of us. So, are you ready to open your eyes? Because once you do, there's no going back.